It is a great pleasure to be together with Jorge Quintana, who is one of the delegates to the Democratic National Convention. The convention is supposed to be in Milwaukee, but due to the obstacles that COVID-19 has created, we are having an online convention. Jorge, you are a veteran of several conventions. How do you feel in this convention that has this unique condition that is an online convention?
I'll tell you, it's on the one hand, it's difficult to not see your friends, not see people you see at the convention. Not to meet with these great speakers that we would normally be meeting with. But at the same time, there is a certain level of excitement, not just for the candidate, not just for this moment in history, but for the fact that this is such a unique experience and we're all figuring it out as we go. Even though we're apart, I know I've been on meetings all day and chatting with people all day and talking about the issues all day. So while it may not be what we had hoped for in terms of going to Milwaukee, which is a fantastic city, there's still some of that excitement of a convention.
I went to the convention in Denver in 2008. It was a historic convention. It was when the Democratic Party, nominated Barack Obama for president and Joe Biden for vice president. I noticed that a lot of the activities of the conventions were happening outside the main platform. I noticed that the main platform got hot around 7:30 because a lot of people, the main speakers were there. But if you will go to any coffee shop, you will find delegates talking to each other. There was a kind of betting for the future of the party. It's very difficult to imagine something like that online.
Well, you're very correct, because at these conventions, there's a multitude of events going on, and they're still going on, but it's not quite the same when you tune in. Like today, there was a foreign policy discussion with Senator Murphy, and that was outstanding. But it's not quite the same as being in the same room and talking to people in the hallways and making those connections, because at the end of the day, a campaign is about making connections. But that being said, it's when history knocks and it's a unique moment, you just got to enjoy what's given to you, and I think we're making the best out of it.
Well, talking to something that is coming is the official announcement of the ticket. Conventions are key moments in the history of the country, because it is at the conventions when parties nominate their presidential ticket. We are making history in the sense that for the first time, Vice President Biden has chosen the first Asian American, the second woman in the Democratic Party, the third woman of the two major parties, and also the first African American to be nominated for the vice president position in the country, Kamala Harris. So we already know what it's about in terms of the ticket, and it's a historic ticket. It has the oldest person to ever has been nominated to be president, together with a woman like Senator Harris, with such peculiar, and I would say unique characteristics. How do you feel yourself in the middle of this political watershed?
First of all, congratulations to Joe Biden on picking Senator Harris. The role of the vice president, first, they have to be ready to step in on day one. And I think Senator Harris can do that. I think Senator Harris also appeals to the face of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party believes that the people's government should look like the people that are being governed. And Senator Harris brings a great set of skills to the table, whether it was her, a career as a lawyer, as Attorney General, or recently as Senate. I think a lot of people, when they heard the announcement, immediately Googled, when is the vice presidential debate? I think people are really looking forward to see Senator Harris take on Mike Pence. But in terms of history, everything we living through right now is historic. Whether it's the pandemic, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's the assaults on decency by Donald Trump. But Senator Harris seems to put a little focus on the moment about that this is not only about today, but the future of the Democratic Party. And I think it was a great selection. And the polls have shown a 3 to 4 point swing in Biden's favor across all demographic groups. So far, so good. And I, like many other people, can't wait to see what she does.
I remember that in the presidential debates in 1984, when Walter Mondale raises the issue of Ronald Reagan age, Ronald Reagan, the Gipper, came with a quite interesting, the great communicator, people used to call Ronald Reagan. He came with a wonderful answer. He said, I will not hold the inexperience of my opponent against him. What is the experience what is Joe Biden's experience? If somebody asks, why are you nominating the oldest person in the history to run for the office of president, for the Oval Office, what would you say is the experience, the merits that justify such particular decision?
Joe Biden has a sympathy for other people's, for what they're feeling, for what they're hurting. First off, he's a good human being. He's considerate. He's compassionate. If you haven't had the chance to watch him speak live, try to get that chance. It's easy to kind of look over Joe Biden because he's been around so long. But I would agree, there's no need to, and we know what a lack of experience gets us, right? That gets us Donald Trump. And the challenges facing the United States right now are so tremendous, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the crashed economy, whether it's our stature in the world. We are no longer the leader of the world's democracies. And at this moment in time, Joe Biden has the skills to come in on day one, start working on those alliances, make Congress work for the American people, and bring that sense of human decency and compassion that is so sorely missing in the political debate right now with the current occupant of the White House. So it's a combination of all those things: his experience, his compassion, and his just basic human decency.
I think that it was quite interesting the way he said that in his model for vice president, he will base his ideas on what he saw during Obama's presidency. That Barack Obama said that even before to take the last decision, he will always consult. He will not play an egocentrical role in this drama, and that he will go to Kamala Harris and he will try to ask her, what is your view about the action to take? And I think it is important because in politics, you know very well, Jorge, because you have been an advisor to the Secretary of State of the great state of Montana, that is in the heart of America, that is so important to look at politics as a team activity. So because Biden had experience as a legislator, he was one of the youngest senator in the history of the country, something that basically created a lot of experience, someone that was able to work across the aisle to the point that he was criticized by Kamala, because Kamala criticized some of his difficult deals, because you know that when you are in dealing with the legislature is a lot about, if you want something from me, you give me something in return, vote for vote and things like that. And he was able to work with even people that for where the party is today were quite, I would say, I don't want to say odious because it's not a word. We are not a party. The Democratic Party is not a party of hate, but they were quite despicable figures at times in the way they defend segregation. I'm talking about people like Strom Thurmond or Jesse Helms that were not, I say it very clearly, they were not my kind of guy to like. And Joe Biden was able to work across the aisle. And I think the combination is interesting because if you have a guy that has developed this experience for quite a long time, and also a woman that is able to stand in principle, but at the same time adapt. Notice that Kamala Harris was originally in the option of Medicare for all, but eventually she moved to a more moderate plan when she received the feedback, particularly in Iowa, during the preparation for the primaries. How important do you think is this combination of these two different figures, this combination of youth and experience in terms of the strength of the Democratic ticket?
You know, no one person has a monopoly on the truth. And I think maybe we got spoiled with President Obama because you could tell he was thinking things over and discussing things with his advisors, his cabinet, and with his vice president, Joe Biden. But at the end of the day, it's about listening to the concerns. The United States is 330-some million people. The idea that one person can have all the answers across the country is just ridiculous on its face, and it's magical thinking on the part of some. When you see Joe and Kamala interact, you see a real warmth there. You see a relationship where Joe, you know, not one person has a monopoly on the truth, right? People bring different experiences to the table, and that influences the way they make decisions. So I think that the fact that Joe Biden has selected Senator Harris, who will bring a different set of experiences to the table, you know, her upbringing will bring something that Joe doesn't have. And I think we all kind of got spoiled with President Obama because we knew he was getting the information, that he was asking the tough questions. And I think Biden's going to be the same way. And I think at the end of every discussion, he will turn to Kamala and say, what do you think? And she will have that influence. You know, the role of vice president is one that can change from administration to administration. But I think in the Biden administration, Senator Harris is going to bring her experiences, which is the experiences of so many of us in the United States. She's going to bring those experiences to Joe Biden. That's only going to make his decision-making that much better.
Jorge, Ronald Reagan said in 1980, he said, recession is when your neighbor loses his job. Depression is when you lose yours. Recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his. In some sense, if Joe Biden will say recession is when your neighbor loses his job, depression is when you lose yours, and recovery is when Donald J. Trump loses his. What will he mean? What will the Democrats bring to the government in the management of the economy and the management of the COVID-19 pandemic that will make the American people expect something different?
Well, first of all, common sense, and we'll listen to science. You know, let's start with the economy. You know, even before the pandemic, our economy was on wobbly legs. And there are way too many people in this country who have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to pay rent and buy food. And if all your job gives you is enough to cover rent and food, that's not living. That's not the American dream. The American dream is you work hard, and maybe you don't get rich right away, or you know, you don't have all the luxuries, but you get ahead a little bit every day, and you can save a little money for your future, for your retirement, for your kids' college. And that ability has been lost on huge parts of our working class population. And we got to get back to that. And Biden's Build Back Better plan, whether it's strengthening the Affordable Care Act, whether it's raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, um, it makes a fair ground for workers. We have to get back to a point where someone could work a job and have a comfortable life, not work 2 to 3 jobs just to basically pay rent and food. And then when you add the effects of the pandemic on the economy, this is not going to be a quick turnaround. But we know Biden's got the experience. Him and Obama came in after the debacle of 2008, and they turned that economy around. I find it hysterical that I saw Vice President Pence talking about how many jobs had been created last week. It's ridiculous. Those aren't jobs that were created. Those were jobs where people, due to the pandemic, couldn't go to work, and now they can return. With the pandemic, I think you'll see it in the way Joe Biden's acting, whether it's moving the convention to virtually, limiting the size of his rallies, or listening to the scientists. That is what is sorely lacking in the response by Donald Trump's administration to this pandemic. Whether it's talking about crazy cures or encouraging people to do, what you shouldn't do in a pandemic, right? Go to crowds, fighting against mask covering. Well, what is that? So I think the Democrats will bring a certain competency that's been missing for the last 4 years, a certain compassion in making government work for everybody, not just the well-off, and respectability. Joe Biden may not get it right all the times, but he will be making his decisions on the best available information, not prejudice or whatever the last tweet Donald Trump saw.
Jorge, something that characterized President Trump has been, I would say, from the first minute when he came down the escalator and began his electoral campaign, was an attitude toward Mexicans. And together with Mexicans, we can say to many Hispanics, Latinos, that was quite discriminatory, to say the least. He said that Mexico doesn't send the best to America. He called them rapists. He has talked about several countries, including Haiti, a country in the hemisphere, as a cheat hole. Excuse me the word. But something that is quite important is the diversity. The American motto is e pluribus unum. That means from many one. In some sense, when the slogan or the motto of the convention is this is a fight for the soul of America, a big issue is the question of migration. And obviously, we have a long tradition in which there are moments in which we have had administration that has been quite hard, quite tough on immigration, and others in which there have been a move to have a safe, orderly, and legal migration. The reality is that there is a very large number of people from other parts of the world who had come to America. And this is great because that means that we are a magnet that bring to America many people that try to build here the dream that they were not able to make or to build in their own country. From Alexander Hamilton, who came from the Danish Virgin Island, to Albert Einstein, to great generals, great scientists, great workers, because Lincoln has said that God loves so much the common people that he made many of them. we can find in every part of America, including your state, Montana, you can find a good Mexican restaurant where you find people working hard and trying to just dream of making a better future for their kids.
No.
Well, you and I are immigrants. I came.
I'm the son of immigrants,
but you are a son of immigrant also, and I have heard from you how important, for instance, was education for your parents when they say, Jorge, you have an opportunity here. You became a lawyer. We both come from not even from the capital of Cuba. I come from the central part of the island. Your family came from the eastern part of the island. But I feel, in some sense, a need to speak more clearly on the issue of immigration. It is clear to me that we need to find a way to impose some order there. I'm not advocating, or I don't find reasonable to advocating for an end of the borders. Every country has borders, they try to protect them, and they say, but it's a reality that when millions of people live on the shadow of your own economy, it's because there has been some incoherence in the way different administration has managed the issue. And a solution to that, already we tried. In 1966, for instance, the Cuban Adjustment Act provides some kind of amnesty and legalization for Cubans that has come to America, not directly all of them qualifying as political refugees. We have the 1986 immigration reform, in which President Reagan, for instance, played a very important role, together working with the speaker, Tim O'Neill, that we frankly miss, because we see that the relationship of the White House with Speaker Pelosi is very difficult, and frankly, there might be responsibility on both sides, but it will not be fair to say that it's equally. The president is the #1 magistrate in the country, so he has the highest responsibility. And it is quite hard to see how it has been so difficult to deal with an issue in which almost everybody across the political spectrum agree. Is the issue of DACA, the deferred action for
childhood arrivals,
childhood arrival, DACA. And I want to ask you, what do you think is the position of the Democratic Party about this? I basically knew that this was something difficult to do, but facing the paralysis of Congress, he tried to force his hand on the agenda of a new Biden administration. If in January 20, we have a change of presidency from Donald J. Trump to Joe Biden Jr., what will be the main issues on the immigration agenda? I ask you because we Latinos supported President Obama thinking about an immigration reform, and there was a moment even in which the Democrats has 59 votes, almost protected against a filibusterism. However, all the priority was given to the ACA. That is a very important issue. It also is very relevant for the Latino community in the United States. But in terms of platform, in terms of legislative agenda, how are we in terms of DACA and immigration reform?
Let me try to hit all your points. You know, as an immigrant yourself and myself as son of immigrants, we know that the story of America is a story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I always tell, you know, and it's not just Donald Trump's words, right? You referenced his first campaign speech where he called Mexican rapists. That's not how immigration works. I always tell people immigration works like this. My mom came to this country. She couldn't speak English. She raised us. She stressed the value of education. She made sure we did what we had to do. And now her granddaughter is studying biomedical engineering at Johns Hopkins University. That's how immigration works. The idea that the people coming to the United States seeking a better life are not the best, that they're bad people, that they're only here to rape and sell drugs or whatever other crazy thing Trump is doing. So, but it's not just Trump's words. Any chance he has had to hurt the Latino community, he's done it. Whether it's hurricane relief for Puerto Rico, whether it's his response to pandemic, which is, of course, affecting the poor among us even more, he never misses an opportunity to do harm to the Latino community. So first, you're going to see a change in tone. You're going to see an administration that respects the history of this country, that knows the great things that were done in this country by immigrants and by their children. We don't get the worst of the world. We get the best of the world. We get people who are willing to leave everyone they know and everything they know to come to a new country just to make a better life for themselves and their families. Those are exactly the people we need in the United States. In terms of DACA, that will be a high priority, to let those dreamers sit in limbo for one day longer than necessary. It's just an affront to decency. I think you're going to see a real push. Remember, DACA and a lot of parts of immigration reform have the support of the majority of Congress. It's just Mitch McConnell won't bring it to a vote. If Mitch McConnell brought DACA up for a vote, we would be done with it, and we would have a pathway to citizenship for those dreamers. Joe Biden's talked about the importance of a pathway to citizenship, not just for those dreamers, but for their parents. We can't be a country that splits families apart over immigration policies. In the short run, that's bad for us. It's bad for our economy. And in the long run, too, it's bad for the soul of the nation. We have to respect the immigrant experience because that's what the United States is. Unless your ancestors, were brought here in slave chains or Native American, your family came from somewhere else. And chances are what they left was pretty bad. And they came to America with nothing except that desire to make a better life. And that energy is what makes America. So you're going to see a change in attitude. You're going to see a push for legislative fixes, not just for DACA and for the dreamers, but across the board for immigration reform. No, the only people calling for open borders are Republicans, right? Who accuse everyone of, their darkest fears. But we can have an immigration system that is humane, that is just, that does right not only by the American people, but by the new Americans, the new immigrants coming ashore. And I think the role of Latinos in the Democratic Party has only grown since 2009. And I think there will be a lot of people holding this administration's feet to the fire to get us a just and fair immigration system that works for the 21st century.
Jorge, something that is connected with immigration, but I think it has to do also with the divisiveness of politics, is how the president has continued his ideas about people that are born here, people that are not born here, the idea of go back to your country, like the idea that people need to show a certificate of birth, like it happened first with Obama, and now, by the way, some people are using the same argument, and people close to the White House are using the same, I would not say argument, I would say the same insult about vice presidential candidate Kamala Harris. You mentioned that the Latinos has a place in the Democratic Party, and I say that's great. There was a history in which the Democratic Party in the Deep South, particularly in the Southwest, in the time before desegregation, in which Democrats, for instance, in Texas, were quite active on the issue of discriminating Hispanics. I basically regret that when the Democratic Party took distance from these people, the Goldwater campaign and then the Nixon campaign and then the Reagan campaign went and pick up those votes, and basically rather than projecting to the future, like in some sense, you might disagree or agree with the Bush family, for instance, but this side of the Republican Party did not endorse the anti-immigrant or anti-Hispanic position, to the point that George P. Bush, the grandson of George Herbert Walker Bush, is together part of the Republican Party in Texas. But something that for me was quite tough, and I think that the media has not reflected quite well, is the reaction of a group of people very hostile to Eva Longoria, who was the host of the Democratic Convention on the first day. They call her, go back to your country. They use sexual slurs against her. And she's from Texas. And let's remember, you are a lawyer and you probably know that very well because, and I have studied that as part of my classes of American politics, but there was a very important case called Hernandez versus Texas. And in Hernandez versus Texas, a great lawyer from Latino descent, Gus Garcia, he answered very clearly. It's in the history of the Supreme Court cases when Gus Garcia answered, my family was in Texas before Sam Houston, this wetback from Tennessee, to Texas. People that are talking about, are using this language of saying, go back to your country. When they refer to a Latina from Texas, they don't even know the history of the country that they claim for them, in exclusion of others. If they have known better the history of the country, they should have say, stay in your state or something like that. Even they shouldn't make the Latino identity of her a problem. We should debate ideas, not people. But it is quite sad to see that a big number of people of our brothers and sisters on the right, because they are citizens like us, and what we would like to see is a better education. In the area of education, where, for instance, candidate Sanders, to be clear on my preference, I was working in California for the campaign of Michael Bloomberg. We didn't do very well, I must say that. But I must say that there was a lot of young people that were quite enthusiastic about the ideas on education that Senator Sanders proposed about making college free or unpaid. People will not have to pay to do, I think, 2 years or 4 years of college. And I think this is important because it will touch people at a certain moment of their mature life, and they can learn more about the history, the ideas, the community of their country. And I don't expect that someone that is well educated will come and say something like that back to your country to someone that was born in Texas.
No. You know, when you brought up Nixon and the Southern strategy, right, to make the Republican Party in a way the party of white male grievance. And once you start going down that road, it takes you away from the idea of America. America is really an idea that we are all created equal and we will all be treated equally by the law. And so they made a deal with the devil. They went after that Southern strategy, and you saw a shifting of political alliances, especially like you said in the South and Southwest. But now they've got to pay the devil his due. You know, when you look at this country, we're going to be a majority minority state country very soon. And their gamble to appeal to those perceived white grievances are now hurting them all across the country. You know, it's not that long ago when Texas was considered a solid Republican state. It's in play in 2020. And even if maybe we don't win in 2020, but I got a feeling we just might. 2024, it's going to be a very difficult map for the Republican Party. And eventually, the Republicans are going to have to, you know, have a sit down, look in the mirror, and say we cannot be a party of hate. We cannot be a party that divides this country based on something as arbitrary as skin color. But until that day comes,
this was what the Dick Armey's report after 2012 election said. Mm-hmm. Even Dick Armey, I remember that he said that you cannot try to attract Latino voters assuming that their main concern is healthcare or jobs or taxes, even if they are conservative, if you begin by insulting their grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And something that this was said, and many people thought that the party will move in this direction, but notice in 2016, they end with Donald Trump that basically took the party in the opposite direction. Do you see, because I think it will be good for America if in some sense, even if in 2020, President Biden, or we have a President Biden, then at least the people on the other side of the aisle think carefully about their own future and the future of the country.
I agree. You know, I think there are some voices in the Republican Party who, unfortunately, now are very quiet or sitting this election out. But we saw that in 2018. The 2018 midterm elections was one of the biggest landslides in history, not just in terms of votes cast for each party, but in terms of seats gained. You know, and this is why, instead of dealing with that head on, instead of saying this is bad for the country, we are e pluribus unum, out of many one. Instead of trusting those American ideals, they have to turn to voter suppression efforts. They have to turn, I mean, whether it's Trump messing with the post office, whether it's Republican legislators saying, you know, you can't use your student ID, but you can use your gun license. You know, when you are a minority party and you aren't willing to change your message, this is what happens. You have to go down the voter suppression route. They know that if elections are fair, they will lose. And that's only going to get worse for them. And I have to hope that there are you know, Republicans of good spirit and who have an understanding of the history of this country, that hopefully after their party goes through a debacle and the Democrats have the Senate, the House, and the presidency, they will sit down and have that moment of reflection. Because otherwise they're on a path to either extinction or totalitarianism. That's their choices right now.
Jorge, in relation to Latin America, many people in Latin America has seen the policies of the president towards the region as a continuation of the treatment that he has given to Latin Americans or people from Latin American origin in the United States. To mention another example is the case of the temporary protected status that President, he claimed that he want to be tough on immigration, and he basically eliminates in a single strike the TPS, the temporary protected status for many Latinos, regardless of the impact that deportations can have on the political stability of countries such as Salvador, Honduras, etc. Or in his policy toward immigration in a quite unilateral way, he basically imposed punishment on Mexico rather than coordinate solutions to problems of migration from a North American point of view. Eventually, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador conceded and he began to cooperate a little more, but the situation might become more difficult in the future. In other areas, such as the embargo against Cuba, the President Trump basically has tried to dismantle everything that President Obama did in relation to a rapprochement policy towards Cuba that was welcomed by the majority, or I will say the totality of the international community. Even during in 2016, during the vote about the US blockade, that's the way it is called in the resolution of the United Nations, even the United States and Israel flipped, and there was, and they abstained, and you have 194 votes, 192 positive votes, and 2 abstentions, America and Israel, because Israel considered that due to its important friendship with the United States, they will accompany the United States in whatever position the United States takes in this case. Do you see that a Biden administration will change this policy? Where are we in terms of platform? Because I remember that in 2016, the Democratic platform spoke for the first time about ending the embargo. I don't remember if you were part of the platform committee, but it was quite interesting that the party as a platform in 2016 claimed the idea of ending the embargo as a goal. I know that in the party there are different forces. You have Senator Menendez in as a very tiny minority, but it's very important. And he might be, if the Democrats recover the Senate, he might be the chairman in the Foreign Relations Committee. How important do you think will be the changes in the, what changes do you forecast in terms of policy towards Latin America?
You know, when it comes to one thing we've learned about President Trump, he doesn't like to read. He doesn't read his briefings. He has no idea of history. You know, he can't be bothered. I saw at an immigration rally, a speaker got up and said, you know, I'm here because you were there. A lot of the problems in Central America that drive migration towards the United States are because of things the United States has done, whether it's the drug war, whether it's supporting dictatorships. You know, as Secretary Powell said, you break it, you own it. And we have to first face up to the role the United States has played in history towards North America, towards Latin America. And on the issue of Cuba, you know, the current platform is very strong on Cuba. It says that Democrats will move swiftly to reverse the Trump administration's policies that have harmed the Cuban people and American interest. At the end of the paragraph on Cuba in the platform, it says that the hope is that these moves will help empower the Cuban people to write their own future. And I think that is what we want. We want to live in a hemisphere of mutual respect between sister republics. And that idea has been lost, and too many times because of the United States acting on short-term interests to create a long-term problem, whether it's El Salvador, Nicaragua, Cuba, Mexico, etc. So I think you will see towards Cuba, the thing Trump can try to reverse Obama's policies, but what we know is that the overwhelming majority of Americans, of Cubans, and of Cuban Americans want normalized relationships. That day is coming. And I think in a Biden administration, you're going to see a much more nuanced treatment of issues of South and Central America. And I hope that, I hope that we hit the ground running on all these issues on day one, whether it's Cuba, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Venezuela and TPS. It's just ridiculous. TPS is such a good program, not just for the people fleeing their state, but for the United States itself. Make these people have a pathway to work, to make a living, etc. So I think we will see an attitude of cooperation, but it's up to all of us, those of us who have something to say on these issues of normalization with Cuba or migration from Central America, that on day one, we do not take it easy. We have a lot of work to do to repair the image of the United States across the Americas as well as across the world. And we have to hold our leaders to the promises they're making, whether that's normalization with Cuba, immigration reform, etc. The election doesn't end November 3rd. That's when it starts. That's when we win and we make our version of a humane United States and a leader in the world a reality again.
Jorge, what a great way to finish this conversation. The election, we are now in a critical moment between August and November, but don't take it easy after that.
No.
Whatever is the outcome of the election, first of all, vote, because it's something important that we are living in a time in which we have a meaningful decision to make. Vote and choose between visions of America. It's a historical moment in the country. At the same time, what you have said is critical, is after November, the future will be decided also by us. There is no time to rest, and whoever wins, it is important that Latinos, Cuban Americans who advocate for good relations between the two countries, a policy of a better understanding between our America, because our America is not anymore Latin America versus North America. Latin America is inside the United States too. And the United States also had many American citizens, by the way, who are living in Latin America. More than 1 million in Mexico, several thousands in Argentina, thousands in Ecuador. This is a hemisphere that had a lot to gain, including together in the context of a world full of competition between great powers. There is a lot to gain from a good relationship between the different parts of our hemisphere. I want to thank you for your kindness of having this conversation with us. I want to wish you big success in the discussion of the platform in the Hispanic caucus, that I noticed that tomorrow there is a meeting.
That's correct. And I would invite all your listeners. It's Wednesday at noon Eastern time. Go to demconvention.com and look for the caucus meetings and join the Hispanic caucus at the DNC for our meetings. We've got some great speakers lined up. I'm not allowed to tell you who they are right now, so tune in tomorrow.
Okay, well, thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Jorge, for this conversation. We are going to post it in Conversaciones Americanas. That is a website that I have and a Facebook page in which I have a conversation with people of. I'll see you and I will talk with you after the second Tuesday in November.
Maybe let me sleep in till about 9 o'clock, but I'll be ready.
Okay. See ya. It's a pleasure.
As always, Arturo.